people.
You mean Indians?
Well, no, they could be Pakistanis too.
All right. So people from the Indian subcontinent, yes.
See, that's why I say certain, not because, know, it could be. How come certain individuals, have... I mean, they come here and they are rich and they are able to own... Like all the newsstands, it's the same thing. A lot of the newsstands are owned by...
these same certain individuals.
Yeah, these same certain individuals.
I mean, you call them Indians. You just go ahead. Pakistani,
because
Bangladesh, whatever. But I mean,
they
would have all been
from Pakistani and
no,
Indian.
but they would have all been Indians had not that area been partitioned. So
maybe you could call them Asians.
I don't like calling them Asians, but so what? Yeah, why them?
Yeah, I'm just trying to figure out how could they, get and Subways.
And Dunkin' Donuts sometimes.
And Dunkin' Donuts, right.
Yes. And everyone knows that. I mean, but that's all over.
But how does
or at least all over the East Coast. I don't know, how far that.
But how does that happen,
stretches.
though? How does that come into being?
I don't know. I mean, I can only take a guesstimate at it. But
what it is that that you could say that from a business perspective that people of color are known for, from a business black people are known for, from a business perspective. What sort of business institution? I mean, Dunkin' Donuts, Subways,
and
right?
7-Eleven, yeah.
Huh?
So, and you're saying that we don't have that same presence in any, specific.
Well, I don't want to say
chain
that.
or industry.
Yeah, I don't want to say that because maybe I don't know. Maybe it could be McDonald's, and I just don't know. Maybe it could be Burger King. Maybe it could be Wendy's, or maybe it's HLS.
Well, HLS is a sole proprietorship. So what we're looking at, you're thinking about these chains that are franchises, yes?
Yeah.
And so, in order to get up the money to buy that franchise or, at least rent the franchise, I mean, you're buying and pay this franchise fee and the royalty fees and all the startup costs and it, which could be hundreds of thousands to millions of dollars depending on where it's at.
But what is it that we can... You see, I mean, I don't know offhand. You don't know offhand either.
Finish the question. What is it that we can what?
What it is, if somebody tell you, okay, name me a franchise that
is predominantly
owned by black people.
I couldn't name one.
I couldn't name one either. Mm-hmm. And you could say, name me an organization that's predominantly owned by Indians, Dunkin' Donuts, Subways, right off the newsstands, right off. As a matter of fact, if you go to New York, the food carts on the streets are mostly owned by Arabs. Mainly owned by Arabs. The food carts all over Manhattan. They sell bagels, coffee, right? They're mainly owned by Arabs. Because I was listening to something today, and
you're getting to something. What is it? Go ahead.
You have Chinatown. You have Little Italy. Right? What it is to have, and I know I'm digressing here, but just digressing because you just jog something in me. What it is that black people have that you can say it's a staple of black people. Going to Chinatown, it's going to be all Chinese. What it is, I mean, you ever heard of Black Wall Street?
Yes.
Okay, right? I mean, that was an institution that was a community.
Right.
Was a thriving community, was predominantly black and black owned, and they burned that to the ground.
Right. So
today, what can we say that's predominantly black owned
in the United States?
In the United States of America.
Well, I don't know. I mean, there are communities out there that are predominantly black that are thriving, and there are communities out there that are predominantly black that are not thriving. So, I don't think that you could say Chinatown or, someplace, especially a Chinatown is, I mean, you can't compare places like Chinatown and any places where there's a specific ethnicity, people were forced to live in those places. So you get off the boat, all right, I'm looking for a place, and okay, you go over there by Canal Street, or you go over here. And, I mean, the segregation was
forced to live there?
Yeah, just like forced in the sense that you, let me see, how do I say this?
You sure you want to say that?
No, the federal government made provisions that they did not want people living together. And Asian people, particularly Chinese, were isolated from other people, as well as black people. So there were areas that you come in. I mean, this is why, again, I don't want to go to the community coalition. They could have, the realtors or whoever has it in mind, you come in and you want to go someplace and they will take you to a certain part of town.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the way it was done for immigrants who are Chinese. I mean, this is why you have ethnic neighborhoods or ghettos or whatever you want to call them, because people are forced to live in those areas or were forced to live in those areas. Sometimes they couldn't get loans to buy homes, but they were forced to live in those areas. I mean, just like how you segregated communities all over Michigan.
So you telling me that the Chinese are forced to live in Chinatown?
Well, no. Today, there are federal housing laws that prohibit that, but...
When they first came here, they were forced to live in Chinatown?
Yeah.
You believe that?
I believe that.
Okay.
It's just like I believe that black people were forced to live in certain areas. So you come in, you work, and you move.
Yeah,
but there's a place beyond 110th Street that you can move to.
But they were forced to live there. But they almost, I don't know if they own everything, but they sell everything in those communities.
Well, see, your question is though I guess the better question, if you allow me to change your question around, is why is it that within black communities we don't really own the things that are there? We don't own the stores. We don't own any other commercial spaces.
Well, it's the same thing.
No, but one is, why do people live where they live?
No.
Amongst their own people.
I wasn't talking about
the other
living.
one is, why is it that we can't open up our own things?
Businesses. Black-owned businesses. Black-owned community owned by black businesses. Owned by blacks, just as how the Chinese have it, the Italians have it, the Jews have it, the Russians have it. You talked about in your community in Detroit, right? What are Arabs?
Yes, a lot of Arabs.
Arabs, they have all their own community, they own all their stores, they sell stuff. Arabs, people go and support them. How come we don't have anything like that?
I mean, it's a good question. Do you have an answer to that? Because I mean, you have to. I don't
remember. I wasn't really born here.
That's not a reason not to know something.
No, it's not that I know it, but I mean, I have my reasons. But I'm just trying to figure out that people tend to want to blame. People tend to put blame on many other things as to why we are in the conditions that we are in, which is true. Some of the things, all right, I mean, racism is one of those, all right? We don't get the equal opportunities that other people get, right? But I think sometimes that we let that hold us back from being the best we can be. And
how do we let that hold us back? What do you mean by that?
Well, making excuses. For example, when I worked on Wall Street for all those years, right? They used to tell me that, and this is factual.
Now, who's the they?
People in the department.
Okay.
And it was people that didn't look like me.
Okay.
They used to say, Ansem, if you were white, you would have been promoted a long time ago. Right? To me...
Did you believe that?
No, I didn't waste my time with it.
Okay.
To me, it was true. But that doesn't do me any good. That doesn't make me feel good for me to believe that and have to wake up and come to work. So I don't want to hear that. I didn't want to hear that. I'm like, okay, thank you. But I never looked at it that way. I've seen people come in that were less.
So are you saying that racism is not an excuse for not moving
Not being
further
all,
ahead.
Not being all you can be. For not being all you can be. Because regardless, it's going to be there anyway. So the way I used to look at it, right? I used to tell myself, I said, listen, I'm in this place here, and I know these things are happening, but I'm not going to let that keep me back from being the best that you can be. Because when you start to take on those type of things, it could have a mental effect on you.
Of course it has a mental effect on you, and I think that's the idea, not just of racism or somebody not liking me or assuming their superiority over me.
Yeah, so
that's not just a problem, though, but it's also a problem of discrimination in itself. And so when people are discriminating against you, they're doing an action that's preventing you from being yourself.
Absolutely. I'm agreeing with that. But I'm saying also is that you got to tell yourself that I'm going to have to face up to this regardless. Am I going to let this destroy me and make me feel that, since they're not going to do this, I'm not going to give it my all? Because we do that. You have a tendency to feel like if, man, they're not going to promote me in this position, so why should I work hard? I ain't going to get promoted anyway.
Well, conversely, on the other hand, there are people, students, black kids, who don't believe that there's racism and that it's all the victim's fault. So, I mean, you can blame the victim, you can blame the system, you can blame the culture that we live in. I mean, and probably there's some validity in all of those. I mean, that's kind of wishy-washy. But if you are walking around with this feeling of self-loathing, that is crippling.
But it happens.
But it's crippling.
It is. And it a lot of us.
So someone who's crippled, I mean, how are they able to be all they can be when they're been cut off at the knees?
Yeah.
Even if it's just in their mind. It's in their mind. I mean, I see this constantly where people have told them, you're black, get back, you're not smart, you're not going to this, you're not that. And they're the first people. I mean, and they believe that. I mean, it's so deeply ingrained that they believe that. I see this every day.
Yeah, but all I was trying to raise the point is that.
But why we don't? Maybe because it's harder to get a loan.
Absolutely.
It's more difficult to raise capital if you're a black person.
Even though it's harder to get a loan, right? You still can't let that. You can't tell yourself, well, you know what? I'm not going to apply to the bank because they're not going to give me a loan because I'm black. Or I'm not going to try to apply for a mortgage because, I'm black and they're not going to give me a loan. You still got to try. You can't tell yourself that it's not going to happen unless you try. I'll give you an example.
Well, wait, you know what? Look, here. Hey. Yeah. Something just came to me.
Go. Okay, shoot. Not me, though.
If you grow up and a large percentage of your community owns 7-Eleven, Dunkin' Donuts, the newsstands, and any other typical place, then you grow up knowing that is within your reach. Yes, you grow up believing that is within your
Dunkin'
reach.
Donuts.
Yes, you say. The guy down the street owns a Dunkin' Donuts. That person owns.
Oh, you mean you can own a Dunkin' Donuts?
So this is within the realm of possibilities.
Okay.
If you grow up just saying people with money are, entertainers or sports or athletics, right? Then that is what you strive for. So the black community, as it is, or African Americans in the United States, we have
black people,
whatever. We have a preponderance of athletes and entertainers, and so when you ask a kid, "What do you want to do?" I want to be a rapper. I want to sing. I want to play ball. I want to play football because that is what they see on a daily basis as a sign of success. So it's not like we see Indians. Out there on the football field, there's no Indian in the United States that's Beyonce or Jay-Z, right?
But you know what? Let me tell you this.
Yeah, there's no Indian that's Magic Johnson. I mean, I can't. Even when they do get one Asian who can play ball. I mean, they get really